All right, fam. So my reading this morning brought me into First Corinthians, and so I read First Corinthians 1 through 7. And here, we're in verse 1, we're actually introduced to another guy that the Apostle Paul went and did preaching with around the different places, and apparently in Corinth is Sosthenes. And I just thought that was interesting. This is a dude that we haven't met before, and we meet him. I'm going to turn the light off because it's a little glary. But here's the thing with the church in Corinth. It's just like the church in the world today. I was going to say in America, but I think this whole concept of the American church or the church in America is way overused. It's the church as a whole throughout the world today has become very secularized, even in third world countries where, in large part, um, a lot of the branches of Christianity, if you will, if I could put it that way, vines um, that are not strictly adhering to the scriptures and the scriptures alone have taken root. So the church as a whole needs to be cleansed, and that's what Paul is talking about in First Corinthians. So, man, they have. I'll summarize it in the first 7 chapters at least in three different areas. They had spiritual pride. They had sexual sin that was um, approved of and celebrated, and they had, I forgot the third, but it'll get to me. So I'll go back to the first one, and then by the time I get to the third, I'll remember it hopefully. Um, Infighting that shows itself in lawsuits amongst believers and things like that. Okay, pride. So he starts off talking about how some of you are saying, "Oh man, I was baptized by so and so," and just kind of trying to um, be at the top of the ladder in people's eyes spiritually. That's the very sin that the Pharisees had and that Jesus rejected and condemned them for in the harshest terms. But we do see that a lot in the church today, that we elevate pastors to the point of celebrity. Um, and oftentimes they elevate themselves to the point of celebrity intentionally through really studying marketing and strategies, um, writing books and putting on webinars or seminars and well, webinars too, conferences and all these things to elevate themselves and so we have that a lot in the church today. The second was the sexual sin, and he was saying, people are doing some nasty things, and you guys are not, and you guys are approving it, celebrating it. Um, is that happening in the church today? Absolutely. We can't. There are some churches today who fully embrace homosexuality. And there's been in this year and last year, there's been denominations that have had splits over that. Um, the whole LGBTQIA plus two spirit thing or whatever has been embraced by a lot of churches today, saying that it's a gospel issue that we love these people and embrace them and not condemn them. And so, yeah, in the church today, just like in the church in Corinth that Paul was addressing, sexual sin is not identified as sin, but rather is celebrated. And then finally, just the infighting and the strife amongst themselves. And Paul's saying, you guys are taking each other to civilian courts, civil courts and that sort of thing. Is there not one wise person among you that could that could listen to your arguments and make a decision, is what he says. And he says, and look, if you can't do that, why not rather just be wronged? And, instead of dragging the name of Christ through the mud. And so the Church of Corinth, in the first 7 chapters, we see struggling with these 3 things, which are the exact things that the church today is struggling with. Lots of lessons to learn, and I wish that instead of sometimes I love reading through the scriptures in a year, because you get to read through these big chunks and you get the full story, the full picture. And then other times, like this morning when I was reading, I'm thinking, man, I wish I could just slow down and just read this paragraph and really understand what he's saying here. And so I do need to do that, and you need to do that as well. We do need to read the scriptures, but we also need to study and meditate on them as well. So those are my thoughts from this morning. Not Acts, 1 Corinthians chapters 1 through 7.